Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bear Insider, Ultimate Insider. I am Mike Pawlawski. Today, we are talking about the game this past weekend versus Syracuse, and it's a rough one. It was not a good game. By far, I think, the worst game of the season for the Bears, although Florida State compares in my head a little bit. But it was not a great game, and the Bears just kind of, it seemed flat to me. It felt very flat from the players. It felt like everything the Bears were trying to do was extremely difficult. I'll start it off by saying, football is a pretty simple game. You've got to block, tackle, throw, catch, and cover. And those are the things that you have to do. If you do those things better than your opponent, then you are going to win. If you don't, then you are going to lose. In this game, the Bears were not able to do those things as well as their opponent. I feel like Syracuse won in the one-on-one matchups. They're really good players. Aronde Gadsden, Trevor Pena, those guys, Meeks, the wide receiver, were able to win in coverage against our players, whether it was Noah Williams or Marcus Harris or Craig Woodson, any of them. When they got the matchup one-on-one, it felt like Syracuse won that more than they didn't. Also, on the defensive line, offensive line side, flip it back and forth, Syracuse won the matchup in the big boys way more often than the Bears did as well. And so if that happens in a game, you're going to be on the losing end of things. Bears had 2 turnovers. Fernando Mendoza threw 2 interceptions, one of which I will say definitely him. As a quarterback, sometimes you what's called predetermine your read. You think, I'm going to go here with the ball based on what I see pre-snap instead of going through your progression. Fernando did that. Had a hitch open front side, would have been easy, 6 or 7 yards. Instead came backside, tried to throw the dig to the tight end coming out of it, and didn't recognize that a linebacker had fallen underneath it. So he predetermined his throw, threw it sight unseen, and as a result was intercepted. Every quarterback in America who's played at any competitive level has done that. But it was a tough time for it because it was the first drive for the Bears. Then came back on the next drive and threw another interception. This one, some of them are reads and decision-making. The first one was that. But the second one was just a ball that wasn't his best football ever, but there's a couple pieces to that. One, as a wide receiver, if you're running the go route, and Tobias Merriweather was running the go route, got him back, tried to use his speed, you cannot allow yourself to be squeezed to the sideline. When you do that, you make the window for accuracy for a quarterback where he has to put that ball very, very small. And quarterbacks, as on the whole, what I train quarterbacks, when I train both my little guys and my elite guys, the only ball that you ever don't catch in football, the ball that's never been caught, is the overthrow and the out-of-bounds ball. And so when a receiver squeezes you to the boundary and then he's on a go route, the boundary is so close, it's hard to put that ball over his shoulder because then you take the chance of throwing both the overthrow and the out-of-bounds ball in one throw. So, Tobias Merriweather, I know he's just back. He's his second game back. But as a college receiver, you need to realize that you cannot be squeezed to the sideline, period. As a quarterback coach, it pisses me off when receivers do this. And it means that they've stopped their thought process and that they've stopped doing the things that you have functionally taught them to do to focus with their assignment. And now they just think that they're going to outdude somebody, right? Make a play, I'm faster, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, whatever it is. And so you have to stay vertical. And they call it stacking the DB. So you get even with him and then you step across his line so that you are now on top of him. He has to come through you for the ball. And it gives the quarterback every option for the ball. He can throw it inside shoulder, outside shoulder, straight over the top. And it makes it way easier. So Tobias Merriweather has to do that. Secondly, when that ball is up in the air, the reason you tell quarterbacks not to overthrow or throw the ball out of bounds is because you expect your receiver to fight for it. If he can't catch it, then nobody can catch it. And that is a pact, an unwritten pact between quarterbacks and receivers everywhere. If you want me to throw you the go ball, then if I do, because a lot of the time it's a 50-50 ball, you need to fight for it. I want you to guarantee that if you don't catch it, nobody's going to catch it. So if that ball's up in the air, you don't have position, whatever it is, you need to come back and make sure that the DB doesn't get it. Tobias Merriweather had none of that. And so that is tough as a quarterback to trust a receiver like that. If you have a receiver that is not going to go up and fight for you and is not going to make sure that either he catches it or no one does, then you can't throw the ball. You can tell it pisses me off a little bit because as a quarterback, you have to trust. You have to take some license sometime to throw a ball like that. You have to just say, hey, this thing's going up, and you got to make a play, and that's it. And Tobias Merriweather, got squeezed to the sideline, made it a really tough throw, and then didn't go fight for that ball. Now, that said, it wasn't Fernando's best throw. He underthrew it a little bit inside, but he gave his receiver a chance to at least fight for it, and his receiver didn't fight for it. So, could it be a better throw? Yes, Fernando could have made a better throw, but you need a better effort out of Merriweather as well to go up and stack that receiver first. First, if you put the guy behind you, then as a quarterback, it's a gimme. You throw it out there, you just let him run to it, and it's easy. And not get squeezed to the sideline. Don't get outside or off your line. Quarterback's got to throw him up his line. So that's a rough way to start off the game. You have 2 drives, I think a total of 9 plays, and you've got 2 turnovers. Now, the Bears defense to start the game, although Syracuse was driving down the field, once they got to the end zone, Bears were holding them to 3 points. But eventually, that dam's going to burst because Syracuse put on a couple of long drives. And then, when the Bears turned it over for the second time, they finally started putting the ball in the end zone. And second quarter was a runaway. It was 21 points for Syracuse. That was a tough one. So the Bears found themselves down by a big number early. And then it puts you in this position, both in terms of schematically, you have to change what you're going to do in the game. But then also in terms of your mindset, in terms of your mentality, it puts you in a different position of being under the gun, being in trouble. And so it makes you press more. It makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And it makes it tougher. So a couple things there in terms of mindset, getting behind early, tough. And then not making plays when the plays are there to be made, also tough. Matchups were a huge problem on defense. Rondé Gadsden's really good. Pena's really good. We talked about that already. And then matchups on offense, they were not getting the blocking for the run game. And now, when teams run a 3-3 stack, there's going to be times when they are out of position, and you can crease them. You can find a way to hit a seam and go. We saw that. Javian Thomas had a 75-yard run, and then Jaden Ott had a 53-yard run. And so those were 2 big explosive plays, which are great to see. 128 yards total on 2 plays. But the Bears only ran for 50 yards for the rest of the game. And so 178 yards showed up in the stat sheet, but really only 50 yards rushing and 2 big explosive plays. And so you need to, I've said it every week, and I guess I should stop, iterating this, but you need to be able to run the football, to open up the rest of what you do, to be able to protect your quarterback, to keep your guy from getting hit. And if the Bears can't run the football, and then the protection on the passer isn't quite there, Fernando got sacked 4 times and pressured several other times, then it's just trouble for your offense. And so the offense kind of stuttered. 7 points in the second quarter, 7 points in the third quarter, 11 points in the fourth. So a tough one. Bears were not great on defense on third and fourth down, 43.8%, almost 45%, which is what my head coach, Coach Snyder, used to call a championship mark for offenses, 45% conversions on third down. But then on fourth down, it's an absolute money down. You make the stop, you get the ball back. Syracuse was 4 for 4 on fourth down. So that is a tough stat on the defense. Have to do better than that in the game. Have to figure out a way to make a play on a couple of those fourth downs, create that turnover on downs, and that changes the game entirely as well. Kyle McCord was as advertised. Ohio State's starting quarterback last year, transferred to Syracuse. He is a really good football player. He is very accurate. He's a pretty decent decision maker. You saw him just throw ball after ball. It was right on the money. So a nice job by him. Fernando, in the end, the numbers weren't awful. 22 for 34, 1 touchdown, but the 2 interceptions, as we talked about, pretty tough. And so you have to be able to hold on to the ball, can't give it away. And on defense, you have to be able to cover, especially in the crucial downs. It just wasn't happening for the Bears. So anyway, I talked to Coach Wilcox earlier. Let's take a look at that now, and then we'll come back. And it's big game week, so let's talk about big game. Joining me now, head coach Justin Wilcox. And coach, this week, a rough one, a rough loss. Every year, every team I've been on has a game where it just doesn't seem like the cohesiveness is there, the focus is there, the attention is there. Just something is off. For us, it used to be against Oregon State when I was at Cal every year. But it just seemed to happen in this game. You've seen the film now. Tell me what you saw on film.
Yeah. Boy, didn't expect us to play that way. We had a great respect for Syracuse, and we knew going in that probably one of the top two offenses we've seen to that point. Boy, we had real issues stopping them. They ran the ball. Everything was going forward. The line of scrimmage was moving. In the pass game, it was, whether we zoned them. If we zoned them, we were struggling to get to the quarterback. We really never got him. We never affected the quarterback with any consistency. And then all the man stuff, they were throwing and catching, and like we were on them, but we weren't knocking the ball down. And then there was some third down, fourth down plays where we had to make a tackle and get off the field, and we missed tackles. It was our worst tackling game. We didn't cover. We were in the right spots most of the time. We just didn't. Moment of truth, we didn't make very many good football plays. They made a lot more than we did. And then on our offense, we had two big runs, which were great, but we turned the ball over twice in the first quarter. We were in chase mode the whole time, and really nothing. We dropped 4 or 5 balls, so that's hard to convert. Drives doing that, and so really, just we didn't play winning football anywhere other than maybe punt team. It's like the highlight of the day, and then we had the 2 long runs. But if you do that, they doubled our time of possession, nearly doubled our plays. They had 2 more takeaways than we did. We were -2 in the turnover margin. So you put that together, you better be an elite talent team to do that. And we weren't good enough on Saturday to win like that.
Yeah, that's the thing you talked about. Teams that are at that super high level, they can play a B game and still win. Against Syracuse, a team that they hadn't shown a great running game. Their defense was okay, but they hadn't been spectacular. They were kind of middle of the country in terms of defense. But you come into that game, and the one thing that we talked about was matchup problems on offense. Rondé Gadsden was a great football player. He can run like a receiver, moves like a tight end, body size of a tight end. Pena, great little slot guy. He just finds a way to get open and make catches, make plays. And so they get him, and then they have the third receiver, Meeks. And so they had 3 guys across the board that you have to be able to match up with every time in that pass game. Making decisions facing a team like that with that kind of talent, how does that affect your ability to stop the run or stop the pass? Like what kind of decisions going on there?
Well, there's both, because you're going to, and they do enough RPO where they're going to have the chalk glass, as you know. RPO game guarantees the offense the picture they want. And so, we saw some of that. And if you play split safety, they're going to hand the ball off. And if you can't get off a block and make a tackle, it's going to get 7 yards. And that happened to us. And then we played a heavy box, even against some single high defense, run front. Even if we were making contact, the line of scrimmage was going the wrong direction. So they got 5 yards. And then in the pass game, if it's zone coverage, like I said, you could play split safety zone or single high zone. And then you got to get to the quarterback, so we can't hold it too long. And then we played a fair amount of man, and we matched up, tried to match up our guys on their guys and have our best players cover their best players. And there was a lot. I think we counted 17 what you would call a contested play. And they won, I think, 11 or 12 of those where just they threw it and caught it. And so when the quarterback throws it accurate, we're not affecting the quarterback, and their guy, they beat us on that play, then, you can only double so many people.
Yeah. And when they used to, you're calling it contested, but people used to call 50-50 balls where there's somebody there and competing for it. And you hope it's 50-50 split or better in your favor. But when it's not, when the difference is that big in their favor, especially third down and fourth down for them, which is one of the big numbers. Third down, 43.8%. That's a pretty good clip for an offense. That was them. But fourth down, 4 for 4. Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah, we had a 4th and let's see, the first one, they had a little boot, and we have the guy hit behind the line of scrimmage, and we didn't tackle him. We couldn't tackle him. We couldn't get him on the ground. And I think the next one, there was a fourth and 1 QB sneak. We had really got pushed. We had 4th and 3 and 0 coverage. We're blitzing them. The ball's going to come out, and we give up we should be impressed, and we're not. And the guy throws a little gimme. And then the last one was a 4th and 2, and we're all over the guy on a corner route. They throw a corner on 4th and 2 to the tight end, and we're all over him, and it's the throw and catch beats the coverage. We had a post player, we had an outside leverage, and they throw it and caught it.
Yeah, so that's the matchup issue, right? Body size, the ability to go get that ball, wingspan. We talked about it. Rondé Gadsden, really good football player. I expect to see him playing on Sundays here shortly. But it creates matchup issues. It doesn't help either that the offense, first 2 possessions, gives the ball away. Obviously, the first throw, Fernando too quick. He was front side, came backside and threw it, sight unseen. He had decided he was going to make that throw. The second one is one of those 50-50 balls, contested balls, that you hope that your guy at least fights for, right? Knocks it down if nothing happens. It could be a plus, a minus, or a 0, and you hope it's a plus or a 0. But they came away with a pick there. Talk about how those interceptions, how turning the ball over like that affects your team.
Yeah, well, they got the ball. They had a long drive. We forced a field goal, and then we have a turnover. The first pick, I think it was 5 or 6 plays into the drive. We'd got a first down, and Fernando, that was not a good play on his part. We throw the interception, and then we hold him to a field goal again. And then we get the ball, and the second play, we throw the ball is going to the right place. We got one-on-one with our, Tobias, who's 6'5". They have a freshman corner. We got to stay on there's a few things got to happen. Fernando can throw a better ball there. It's not a perfect ball. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not perfect. We have to hold what we call the red line. The receivers got to hold the red line. And then when the ball's in the air, we have to go compete and get the ball. I mean, and if we don't get it, we got to damn sure make that the other guy doesn't get it. And so that was a disappointing play in many respects. And we need to have more competitiveness at the catch. And when we have 6'5" and a guy that can run, we got to throw it down the field, and then the big tall guy's got to go get it. I mean, we can't let the corner just go up and catch the ball like that. That was a very disappointing play.
Yeah, you're right. All 3 phases of that. When I coach the young receivers, I always tell them you have to restack. You have to stay on your line. You cannot let yourself get squeezed to the boundary, because then it creates the opportunity for bad passes like that. Your quarterback's looking at you in a vertical stretch. He's not thinking about the lateral stretch as you're moving away from the ball too. And so, but that's the thing about offense. It all has to be perfect to execute it properly, right? And you hope that your guys make up the difference in terms of plays. So I agree with you 100% there. Other than the second quarter, which was all touchdowns, you were holding them to field goals. Your defense was keeping them out of the end zone. How frustrating is that for you watching the offense not be able to make up the difference when they're giving you 4 points each time?
Yeah, I mean, we got to find ways to put the ball in the end zone, and obviously the two interceptions early put us behind. The run game, the Jet hit a big one. He looked great. Jaden had a big run. In the run game, it was either, a good run, like 5, 8, 12, the 250 pluses, or it was nothing. We had some missed targets up front, unfortunately. And then the pass game, it seemed out of rhythm. We were not in great rhythm the entire day. And then when we had drops, we had 4 to 5 drops, and we're not in a position to be able to drop the ball and still score touchdowns. So just overall, other than the 2 big runs, and we did force field goals, and that's something we emphasize, but defense has got to get off the field on 3rd or 4th down. We got to win some of those one-on-ones. We have to be better in the run defense and affect the quarterback. And then offense, we got to find ways. You got to find ways to put the ball in the end zone. And we had some opportunity even late in the game. I mean, there was the drive we end up scoring on. The first or second play, we run a post, and their post player doesn't play the post, and we have a guy running, and we gotta complete some of those, and that's on the receiver, it's on the QB, it's on the O line, it's on everybody. But in college football, I think it's, just generally speaking, Mike, and you probably have an opinion on this, but, the goal is you got to score 4 touchdowns on offense. How do you score 4 touchdowns on offense? Defensively, you got to hold them to 3 touchdowns or less, and then it's the field position, 3rd, 4th down stops, the field goals, penalties, all that other stuff. But that's the winning formula. I think it's very difficult to win in college football if you give up 4 or 5 touchdowns on defense, or if you don't score, 4 on offense. So that's our goal. Each and every week at the end of the game, we look at how many times did we score on offense, touchdowns? How many times did they score touchdowns on offense? What were the explosive plays? And what's the turnover margin? Like, those are the things to me that if you boil it down, like you do those things, you're going to have a hell of a chance to win. I think, that's what this, for us in our history here, those are the statistics that matter the most.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue 31 points and 2 turnovers, right? That's what you need to get to that 31 points, and that also creates that defensive stop for you where you're keeping them out of the end zone and taking that ball away. So I would think that those stats are exactly right. And then 3rd and 4th down conversions are huge too. So all those things are a big difference, and that's how you get the ball back. So kind of philosophically speaking, I would think as we've seen NIL and transfer portal and everything kind of go along right now, I would argue for teams who are not the top teams who are paying $20 million a year and go buy whoever they want, afford whatever they want, that teams are figuring out that really the majority of their money needs to be spent in that line area, in the box on both sides, right? Offensive line, defensive line, because it always comes back to this. I've said this since I started broadcasting. I said it when I was a player. The line dictates the game. Offensive line, defensive line play changes the nature of the game. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I think, and it's playing out in recruiting. It's playing out in the NIL world. It plays out in pro football. And those guys have been doing it for a long time on in terms of, valuing positions. And inside linebackers are really important, valuable. So are safeties. So are running backs. Obviously the quarterback position. Corners are important, but if you are going to win consistently and play really well and be able to overcome maybe a guy slipped in the back end, a busted coverage or something, the teams that up, because the reality is everybody makes mistakes. Like, I know people assume that the teams that win every week don't make any mistakes or coverage or don't ever, drop a pass. The reality is they all do. And there's busts, and there's teams that bust a lot, but the guys up front, can make up for that. And so I agree with you, Mike. And I think the challenge that we all kind of are working through, and you have to find your niche in this, is there's fewer human beings that walk this earth that can play left tackle at a high level, play right guard, and be able to move people and pass protect. And probably even fewer yet that can play 3 technique and win a one-on-one. If they're gonna get you a one-on-one, like, you're gonna beat them, And so those positions, when somebody has proven that they can do that consistently, they are highly, highly, highly sought after. And in this environment, they're paid a lot of money. And so, you just got to make sure that, when you're targeting people, like, you're identifying, okay, how can this person help us in this area based on what we're asking them to do in the scheme? Can they do that? Because the obvious ones, that jump off the tape, like, everybody sees it, But I think you're 100% on it. If you just look at the NFL contracts, look at the people that make the most money. It's O-line, quarterbacks.
Yep.
Most important position in sports. You would know better than anybody.
100.
O-line, pass rush, a great receiver, a corner. I mean, there's a reason, because there's just fewer. It's a scarcity issue. There's not enough people that can do that at a high level.
And those guys change the game at their spot.
100%.
If you can have, and Justin Allegri and I were just talking about this off camera, you can have a decent back, but if you have a fantastic offensive line, he's going to be a 150 a game rusher. As long as he's decent and has enough speed, right? But if you don't have a decent line, you could have the best back in America, and he's going to be struggling for yards. He's going to be 2.3, 3.2 a carry.
And you could say the same for the secondary. You could have. Would you rather have
with
three elite corners, a nickel, a corner, and an elite nickel, and a below average D line front group, or two elite front guys and an average secondary? You're going to take the front because
would much rather face the All-Americans in the back end than the rush guys. I can tell you that
because you could only cover for so long.
Yeah, and we know what we're doing. They have to guess.
Yeah.
So the line dictates play everywhere, and so that's such a big thing when people are looking at games. I get people coming up to me and asking me about obviously. When we're talking about our game, they're talking about Jaden Ott, and they're like, well, what about Jaden? I'm like, well, it's more than just one guy ever in football, and you have to think about the whole picture. But line dictates the play on both sides of the ball. So that's just kind of my take. Let's turn the page on Syracuse now. Take a look at Stanford coming up. It's big game week. It always means a ton to players, to fans, to alumni, everybody who's been around this program. It's a huge piece of the tradition, right? And so it's nice to get back to a little normalcy for what we've been doing. This whole season has been so foreign. I think Jeff Ferrato put it perfectly in his article today, and that it's been an odd year going to the ACC, but now normalcy, back in the big game. We face our foe, Stanford. Talk about what this game means to the team and the program.
Well, the longer you're involved in it and the more you get to experience it, just the deeper and deeper appreciation you have for it. It's one of the oldest rivalries in college football, 127th game. Nearly half are one score. It's going to be tight. Everybody brings their best. It means a lot to the fans and the student body and just the institutions. It's one of the great things about college football. And I'm thankful, like you are, that we can hold on to that. Yeah, because it does mean a lot. And when, for the players, we have 6-year guys, Craig Woodson, Miles Williams, They know, they feel it. You have guys that have been here 3 months, 4 months, or maybe 1 year, and it's not their fault, but they don't quite understand yet. And the older they get, they'll understand better and better with each and every year, especially if they've been in it 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years for some of these guys. And then once they're our age, then they're going to really understand it. But our job to educate them. Hey, man, this talk about the history of the game, what it means, the two institutions, and I think that's okay. I mean, obviously, we have to prepare to win and play great football, but I think there is a space to educate them because this is one of the great parts of college football is these rivalry games. So I don't want that to be underappreciated. I want to make sure they get it. So we talk about it at team meetings. We got videos on it. We have statistics on it. But they're going to learn and. The Friday night before the game, we always go through it's kind of like, it's like Christmas Eve almost. We go through the story of the Axe and how the Axe came to be and the history of the Axe and all these different things that have happened. And so we do that every Friday night before the big game. We'll do it again this year. And, by the time they get to be 4th and 5th year players, they basically know the story. So, but I think it's a good thing. Like, I don't want to, I think sometimes coaches, we can, it is, every game counts the same, but there is room to appreciate the history of this and the magnitude outside the building. And yeah, we have to go play football. Like we got to scheme and do your job and focus on that. But like as we're doing that, like let's appreciate this and enjoy this moment and go out and do the best we absolutely can for the Cal community.
Yeah, 100%. To your point, when I was a freshman, I remember going to the bonfire rally at the Greek, and here's Granny, and I'd never met her before, and she's doing, the Axe, giving the Axe, chant for us, the cheer for us. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, had no idea as a freshman. And then as a sophomore, I started to feel it. And then I'm getting calls from Steve Barkowski and Craig Morton, and I've got guys who played years before me, Chuck Muncie, reaching out to me in this game, as I become the starter. I'm like, wow, this really does mean a lot. It's you can see it and understand it. And now looking back on it, as a former player in the game, just what it means and how much it just brings to the game between the two communities. I always tell people, if you want to know how important the big game is, it's the only game in Trivial Pursuit that's actually listed. And they ask, what is the big game in college football? And it's in Trivial Pursuit. It's Cal Stanford. So That's the claim to fame that I use with people elsewhere. But talk about Stanford. They get a big win over Louisville last week. Ashton Daniels is back, and he's a difference maker.
Yeah, he's an issue because he's 220 pounds. He averages 5 yards a rush. He throws the ball. They got weapons with Ellick. The receiver, another freshman receiver, is playing well. And so, yeah, I mean, 38 points they put on Louisville, by far it looks like their best game. And so we expect him to play well. And it's going to take team defense because and Troy does a really good job. They give you a ton of different looks, very creative, outnumbering you in the QB run game and then creating one-on-one situations in the pass game. So they do a really good job.
And that was one thing when I played with Troy, I'm like, I couldn't see him being a guy who's a QB run guy, right? He was a straight drop back guy, West Coast guy. But then with the system, he kind of evolved to that whole air raid piece into the quarterback run, into gap scheme run stuff. And, he just loves doing that with his offense. Where defensively, they looked better, I'd say, at points versus Louisville. Talk about their defense and what you see on the defensive side of the ball for Stanford.
Well, David Bailey's back and going. He's a all-conference player. Tobin Phillips is really hard to move, so their front looks the best that it's been. And then the two inside backers, I imagine Tristan will be back. It seems like Tristan's been playing for 10 years. I remember him in high school. But the two inside backers are really good. The middle of the defense and David Bailey, those guys are really good players. They've had some injuries in the secondary, but as you know, when you got a rusher like Bailey and Tafita, I think his name is, and then you got Tobin inside with the two inside backers, that's a sturdy group. And so we're going to need to be balanced on offense. Certainly don't want to be one-dimensional. And then we're going to have to be efficient in the pass game. It's going to come back to the same old coaching stuff that we always say, but have some balance and ultimately put the ball in the end zone.
It's funny how football always circles back to the fundamentals, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like those are the things that you have to do to make it happen. And the one big thing that I would add, obviously, the big game means emotions are up, right? People are cranked for that game. And my senior year, our team had a bunch of personal fouls and penalties like that because we were so cranked for that game. Louisville lost the game because of idiocy at the end, right? 1 minute left and they're committing penalties and doing stupid things. How do you find that perfect balance between fully engaged, big game rivalry and focused and at the level where we're not red line and out of our heads?
It's like being able to channel that emotion into doing your job at the absolute highest level. Because emotion can be a great tool or it could be like your worst enemy, and being in the red, I think is exactly, there's a curve. This is old Coach Foster, Bob Foster taught me this, the performance energy curve or performance anxiety curve. And when it gets too far over here, you got too much energy, too much juice, your anxiety level's high, like you're not going to play well, So you need to be able to balance that. Sometimes you got to bring yourself back where you find that peak performance. And obviously on the flip side, if you don't have enough energy for the game or anxiety for the game, like you're not going to perform either. So it's like either one of those things can work against you. So learning how to channel that's a skill. There's players, we have them on our team. We had a penalty in the Wake Forest game that was exactly that. Really poor penalty that cost us a possession because the guy let his emotions get the best of him. So we will show those, talk about it, acknowledge it's an emotional game, and like the best players are able to channel that emotion into playing great football.
Yeah, and understanding when and where and what it is that your nervous system is doing at the time so that you can at least recognize it and then use that to your advantage. Appreciate it, Coach. Looking forward to the big game coming up. Always a pleasure doing big games. I always love it, and I love the atmosphere. The fact that we have a sellout is also, it's a massive thing. Cal fans still showing their love for the game. So I appreciate this week, and I look forward to the Bears bouncing back.
All right, me too. Thanks, Mike. Go Bears.
So I would say Coach Wilcox, and as we just talked about, big game is a big deal. And no matter which side of the ball you're on or what year you played at Cal Stanford is a big deal. And so I look forward to big game every year. It's awesome. This year is going to be a little bit different because there's going to be some weather coming in this week. They say there's an atmospheric river on its way. So a lot of water coming, make the field wet. We've had wet big games before. But we have not had to deal with weather so far this season. So it'll be the first wet weather game that the Bears play in this week, and same for Stanford, I think. So that's one thing. It helps Stanford in a little bit because their game offensively is around the quarterback run game. Ashton Daniels, who is the quarterback, was hurt for a little bit, came back, was a starter earlier this season, came back, started against Louisville, who they just beat 38-35 last week. And I just talked about it with Coach. His run game, the way he inserts in the run game, evens up the numbers. If you think about it, a defense has 11 guys. An offense generally has 10 guys plus a quarterback. So if the quarterback's either handing off or he's throwing the ball, that takes it down to 10 versus 11 on every snap. The advantage the offense has is they know where they're going and the defense does not. So once you add the quarterback back into the run game, it gives you an extra hat, an extra blocker, or an extra diversionary guy, distraction guy, something that can change the scheme on defense. You have to account for everybody. You can't just eliminate the quarterback. And so Ashton Daniels is a big dude, comes in about 220 pounds. He can run. He's athletic. He leads the team in rushing, as I said. In terms of his passing, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Decision-making is something for him that he needs to work on. But he was the guy in the game against Louisville that brought them back in the game, being able to run it, being able to throw it. Then versus Louisville, a trick play where they lined up under center, 4th and short, and gave a look like they were going for it, threw the ball downfield with their backup, their running quarterback, short yardage quarterback, and hit a huge pass. So I love what Troy does. I love the way he thinks. And I could just see it in his head before he called that play, like, screw them, because the officials got the timeout. He was trying to quick snap him, and they called the timeout, and Troy was hot before that one. So anyway, it'll be good to see my guy Troy Taylor again. Obviously, Cal quarterback ahead of me. Feels weird to see him on the opposite side of the field, but he's doing what he loves, which is coaching football. And so good on him. Look forward to seeing the Bears pick their game up this week to get to a better place. And hopefully they can find that place mentally where they're in the zone, where they can operate at peak efficiency without being over the top. I don't think anybody coming into this game will be too low. That's just not possible in a big game. It's going to be a sold-out atmosphere. It's going to be daylight game. I just think the energy is going to be there. Guys are going to be up for it. The question is, do you go over the top? Does it spill? And does it cause problems for you? And I think if the Bears can keep it from doing that, then it's a big deal. It's a mindset thing, something that the Bears need to figure out, need to master. Because we've seen them kind of up and down this season, and being able to get the mindset right and being able to get your nervous system modulated so you can play at peak is essential. You guys know I wrote the book this year, Everyday Great. Get on my mailing list, text GREAT, GREAT, to 55444. Help you get a copy of the book, but I'll be giving you insights on the athletic mindset. I appreciate you being here today, and I look forward to the big game this weekend. Watch the Bears bounce back and hopefully bringing home the axe. That would be huge. For Bear Insider, Ultimate Insider, I'm Mike Pawlawski. As always, go Bears.